We're going to take a trip back in time, way back, like 9,000 years, to meet the very first people who ever called Ireland home. It's an amazing story that goes from simple stone tools to incredible golden treasures, and it shows how a whole civilization was born out of a wild, empty landscape. So let's dive in.
Just look at this thing. It's called a dolmen, a tomb from the Stone Age. And here's what's absolutely wild. Structures just like this one were standing in Ireland long before anyone even thought about building the pyramids in Egypt. It's this incredible, mysterious connection to our most distant ancestors.
So you have to wonder, right? Who were these people? How did they manage to live? What did they believe in? And what on earth drove them to build these things that would last for eternity? Well, today we're going to put on our archaeologist hats and piece together the clues they left behind for us.
Okay, so our story starts with the true pioneers, the very first hunter-gatherers to set foot in an Ireland that was completely untouched by people. Let that date just sink in for a moment, 7,000 BC. That is 9,000 years ago. These people were showing up in Ireland millennia before ancient Rome was founded, or before the Golden Age of Greece. The amount of time we're talking about it's staggering.
So how on earth do we know that? Well, archaeologists have found these tiny, faint traces they left behind, things like post holes from their shelters, and little chips of flint they worked into tools. All this evidence points to them paddling over in simple canoes from what's now Scotland, making their very first homes right near modern-day Derry.
Okay, so they've made it to Ireland. Now what? What was life actually like for them? Well, it was a constant grind for survival, and it all came down to two things: having shelter from the elements and having the right tools to build a life.
This recreation gives you a pretty good idea of one of their earliest homes. The design was super simple, but really smart. You bend some young trees into a dome shape, and then you just cover that frame with animal skins. Later on, they got a bit more advanced, weaving branches together and plastering them with mud and clay, a technique we call wattle and daub.
And this was their tech. These tools look pretty basic to us, but they were actually ingenious for the time. They chip away at flint to make sharp axe heads, and then attach them to wooden handles. This was their Swiss Army knife, you know? They used it for everything from clearing forests to hunting animals to building the very huts we just saw.
But once people get the hang of day-to-day survival, something else always seems to pop up. You get beliefs, you get rituals, and this really powerful connection to ancestors. And that brings us to a really fascinating question. How did they honor their dead?
Well, the answer is literally written across the Irish landscape in giant stones. They built these massive, awe-inspiring tombs that have managed to survive for thousands of years, and they give us this incredible window into their spiritual world. I mean, can you just imagine the effort this took? They were moving and stacking these enormous stones with no modern machinery at all. Building these incredible passage graves wasn't just about a burial, it was a massive community project. It was something likely reserved for the most important people in their society.
And they built a few different kinds. We've already seen those iconic dolmens, but they also built things called court cairns, which had this open courtyard area that led into the burial chamber. And then you had the most elaborate of all, the passage graves, like the world-famous one at Newgrange, which is perfectly aligned to the winter solstice sunrise. Just incredible.
But then, after thousands of years of everything being made of stone, a revolutionary new technology comes to Ireland, and it changes everything. We're talking about the ability to work with metal. This is the dawn of the Bronze Age.
And right here, you can basically see that revolution in one single image. On the left, you've got the old stone axe, but on the right, you have a bronze sickle used for harvesting crops. This wasn't just a new tool. It was a massive leap forward that made farming so much more efficient and completely changed daily life.
And of course, new technology creates new kinds of wealth. Just look at this stunning object. It's a lunala, a crescent-shaped necklace that was hammered out of pure gold. An item like this was a huge status symbol. It was proof that society was getting way more complex, with real hierarchies starting to form.
And their cleverness wasn't just for jewelry and weapons. Nope, they developed some really smart new ways to do everyday things, like cooking. This setup here is called a fulacht fiat, and you can basically think of it as a prehistoric slow cooker.
The whole process was simple but absolutely brilliant. First, you get a big pile of stones and heat them in a fire until they're scorching hot. Then, you use some tongs to drop them into a trough that's filled with water. The crazy heat from the stones makes the water boil, and then you can cook huge joints of meat in it. It's totally ingenious.
So as society was changing, their beliefs were changing too.
The shift from the Stone Age to the Bronze Age wasn't just about technology. It was a deep cultural transformation. And we can see that change most clearly in how they started to treat their dead.
And this right here, this might be the biggest shift of all. Back in the Stone Age, you see these huge communal tombs that honor the whole group, the collective. But in the Bronze Age, the focus flips completely to these smaller individual burials. It's all about celebrating the status of one single person.
And this is what that new focus on the individual looked like in real life. Instead of some giant monument for everyone, you get a small, stone-lined chamber called a cist, built for just one person, who was often buried with their most valuable personal items. So this new focus led to all sorts of different practices. Along with these stone chambers, cremation became way more common. People were buried with food for the afterlife and the weapons they used when they were alive. They also built these cool underground chambers called souterrains, which were kind of like ancient safe deposit boxes to store valuables, and sometimes to bury their dead.
And as those massive old tombs fell out of use, new sacred spaces started to appear. People began building these really mysterious stone circles, or henges. We think these became their new open-air temples, the centers for worship and community gatherings in the Bronze Age.
When you really step back and look at the whole story, the transformation is just incredible. I mean, to go from those first pioneers with their simple stone axes to a complex society making these gorgeous golden necklaces, Ireland was completely and fundamentally reshaped over thousands of years.
And it really makes you wonder, doesn't it? For all the amazing things we found in their tombs and their treasures, what other secrets about how they lived and what they truly believed are still out there, just waiting to be discovered right beneath our feet?